Good afternoon. I'm going to do my Module 7. My name is Gord Sarkissian, Module 7 of the Becoming a Master Instructor program at Vancouver Premier College. Today's video is all about assessments and some of the tips or tricks or tools that I use in assessing my students. I'm currently teaching the Business Communication program at Vancouver Premier College every Friday, both a B and C block. I'd like to talk a little bit about how I go about linking assessments to course objectives. So at the start of every term or every program, we go through and do an outline to the students and talk about the various objectives that we have in the program. One of the things that I found extremely valuable is to, before we go into the lesson, just talk about those objectives again, and maybe tell them which one we're going to focus on today, so that when they're going through the program, they can relate everything that we're learning and each one of the things that we're doing to the objective that we've talked about. And sometimes there can be multiple objectives in each class. So recently I did that. What I did, we were setting up for a presentation on doing a survey. The survey was intended to gather information so that the students could write an effective business letter. So we went through, we reviewed the objective, which was, in this particular case, was to speak confidently in a public setting with clarity. And something that's very challenging for a lot of the students who come from a different background and aren't normally put into a situation where they have to speak publicly. So we went through that objective, and as we were building the surveys, one of the ways that I like to do assessments is I like to bring a student from outside the group into helping me assess the students. And the target or the objective I asked them to mark on, or the rubric I asked them to mark on, was the speaking publicly with clarity and confidence. So they would review the program with me as the students were presenting it, and then they would give me their feedback on what it looked like. Very helpful for the students to do this, because it let them see what the standard might be. I also, before the session, or before the assignment was given, I shared with them what a average, good, and great session might look like. So the PowerPoint presentation that they could see. As they went through this, I shared with them what made this average, what made it good, and what made the last one great, what the difference makers were. I think this was a very valuable thing for them to see. It helped them kind of set the standard to get towards where great is. After we were done, I think the students really learned a lot about what they could do better and what they did well as well. And I gave them direct feedback immediately following the presentation, and I made that feedback public. It was never presented in a harsh way, and certainly when things were positive, I accentuated the positive. I tried to downplay as much as I could the negative. And again, I think it was very valuable. A second way that I like to do this work is I like to present when we're going through the system, teaching students about authenticity and integrity. At the very beginning of the program, I do a program called the comfort zone. What are you comfortable with? What can you learn from staying where you are? And what can you learn from stepping outside of where you are? I found this to be a valuable tool, and I go through this a couple times at the beginning of the program. I also talk a lot about integrity and authenticity. I do a bit of an introduction to it at the start of the program, and then we have a discussion on it over the ensuing 2 or 3 weeks. We only meet once every Friday, so it gives me a good chance to develop something. It gives them a good chance to think about things as well. After we've had the discussion on integrity, we kind of develop a set of ground rules for operating at the in the class, and it creates a culture that really helps them assess themselves as to whether we're on track or not. At the end of the program, just before the end of the program, I developed a letter that I asked the students to help me develop that talks about integrity and how we're going to approach the final exam. I think it's a valuable tool that I would like to share with you if I could. I'm just going to pause my screen now and come briefly back to it with the letter in the share mode. So I've put the share letter up on the screen and shared it with you to have a look at. The letter was presented or was written based on information that the students provided to me, as well as some work that I've done in the past myself. The idea is that we've arrived at a certain time of the program, and now it's time to really test our knowledge, to see if we understood the content of the program, and really acknowledge each student for the way that they've done their work up to this point. I lay out 5 parameters by which I'd like them to take the exam for Communications 225 or any test that I offer. And it just simply states they'll write this exam using the highest ethical standards. They won't use any electronic device to search for answers to any of the questions. They won't refer to any notes or publications of any sort during the exam. They won't consult with another person either electronically or in person. And they will not respond with anybody else's work unless they identify it as somebody else's work. I make sure that I tell them that I trust in them and that I believe in them and that their commitment to their educational goals is paramount. And I offer the opportunity for them to ask me questions before they do this acknowledgement. So this has been a great tool. I think, you know, where my exam marks the highest, no. Did the students learn about integrity and authenticity? Yes. And it really helped us to arrive at a place where we treat each other in a culture that's fair, and it's going to be a real reflection of where they are. And if they're not there, we talk about that and we try to get them there. So that's really all I have to share on the program at this point. Thanks very much. I'll look forward to doing my next video with the group. And yeah, thank you.